So the topic is community policing reimagined, and telling you what you already know. As law enforcement officials, whether we're sheriffs, whether we're deputy sheriffs, captains in our organization, the community obviously has placed their trust in you. Whether you're the elected official or whether you're appointed by, you're serving as an undersheriff, somebody's put you in a position of trust. Traditionally, law enforcement, we've been very good at metrics. We measure what matters. And what have we measured? Crime rate, clearance rate, those types of issues, which really affect the safety of a community. But I think we would all appreciate, recognize, and agree that those metrics have not necessarily served our profession nor our communities well. So what we do at Zencity, and what I used as the chief in Grand Rapids, this tool was to map, measure, and track public sentiment. When I inherited the department, I knew we were rock solid when it came to crime fighting. I looked at UCR, I saw our clearance rates were well above the national average. I looked at our crime rates, I saw they were well below the national average. But I also sensed there was a disconnect between community and the 400 officers we had. So what did I do? I do what you all do as sheriffs, as command staff. I reached out to community. It's a community of 250,000 people. I go to neighborhood association meetings. I get 20 people show up. I go to a city commission meeting. It's the same 10 people with the same issues. So the challenge was, how do I hear from the 99% who get up every morning, go to work, get their kids off to school, come home, feed them, get them to bed, and repeat the next day? Those are the people who obviously support us, but they've got issues as well, issues that aren't necessarily being heard. So what Zencity does is, by using an algorithm on their telephone, on your telephone, we can reach out to your residents. It's geo-coded and geo-fenced, so we know that we're hearing from the people who live in your community, not people from across the country who have a pet issue that they're trying to drive home, or want to see defunding of a sheriff's office, or have an issue with corrections. You're hearing from your own residents. So what you'll see up here is Chicago, who's a customer. And John, if you'll start that. So we actually heat map trust, the same way we've been heat mapping crime for generations. We've been reporting to the FBI since the 30s. What this does is gives you real-time scores. So if you'll pause it just a second, John. So the difference between this and a traditional survey is this is real-time and ongoing. So if you have a critical incident tonight, or let's say you don't have one, but there's a George Ferguson issue, George Floyd or issue, or another Ferguson, this helps you identify how it's affecting your community. So you'll see, go ahead and start that up. We break it down by districts. So however your divided geography, if you've got zones, if you've got beats, if you've got commissioner districts, however you want it, we can provide you the data in that format. This is not like RMS or CAD. All you have to do is give us the map of your community and we do the rest. So it's not a big, heavy lift. You don't have to meet with your IT people. You don't have to explain the process. This is all web-based. So this is what you see once you come on board. So in Chicago, we measure and we give them real-time feedback. Go ahead and play that, John. So the comment feed, this is 24/7, 365. And I'll share an incident that happened in Grand Rapids when I was there. I woke up in the morning and I would look at this before I even got out of bed. I saw 3 comments about the same issue. It was an 11-year-old African-American girl that we handcuffed at gunpoint when in fact we were looking for a 40-year-old white female. Before I even got in the shower, I had body-worn camera pulled. I had contact information for the mother. I had reached out to our organizations, civic organizations within the community. By the time lunch had rolled around and it was breaking on local news, I'd already met with the mother and the daughter, spoken to the officers involved. We'd already looked at policy in terms of how we could tweak it to do 2 things: mitigate the damage we had already caused, and to make sure we didn't have a reoccurrence. By the time the story went national on all 3 networks by 6 o'clock, we had all the answers before the questions were even asked. First time in my career I've ever been able to give a press conference and anticipate the questions and already have what we had done to correct the situation. So real game changer in that respect. More importantly, or I should say equally importantly, is In terms of roll call, going out and sharing with the officers, whether you're a detention-only sheriff's agency or whether you're detention and road patrol, we capture the comments that are important to the residents. All too often, as you know, we focus on violent crime, but what's important to the people who live in your communities? Speeding, graffiti, loitering, homelessness. So we capture that and we map that. And if you'll pause that for a second, John. Go ahead and open up the different categories. So we do all this for you. We bucket it into which category these issues arise. So when you see the trends in the corner, we'll open that up, and that'll show you more specifically what's driving the conversation. Or if you just want to hit play, John, you can just hit play and we'll go from there. All right, so here it is broken down by neighborhood, and here it is broken down by issue. And what's unique about us is we look at your census data. We make sure that we're reaching your community in the numbers that match the demographics. So if you're 4% Asian and you don't have or you have a challenging time hearing from your Asian community, or you're 18% Hispanic, but because of immigration issues, they're reluctant to come to community meetings or to reach out to the sheriff, we reach out to them. So let me walk you through the process just a little bit. And then at the end of this, we'll be available to answer any more questions that you'll have, because inevitably you'll have more questions at the end of this than you did when you sat down. So on my cell phone in Grand Rapids, I wake up in the morning, I go to Wood TV to see what's going on. I get a pop-up. It asks me 3 questions. Am I willing to weigh in on public safety in Kent County? I answer yes. First question is, how safe do I feel in my community? Well, I live right downtown. I live in a high-rise on Bridge Street. There's some homeless issues, but generally I feel very safe. I give it a score. How much confidence do I have in the Grand Rapids Police Department? Well, that was an easy one to answer. Then the next question is the open-ended question. What issues would you like to see the sheriff or the chief concentrate on that they're not currently concentrating on? So that's where the real-time feedback comes on. So if you'll speed up to the comment section. So this is a snapshot in time because we downloaded it, but when you log on from your computer or from your office, you'll see this in real time. I'd go to roll call and share with the officers what the issues were. We talk about community policing. We talk about how we hear from community, but the technology's out there to make sure that we're actually providing data-driven, community-oriented policing. And yet, how are we policing? We're still policing anecdotally. We go to a meeting and we hear from the loudest voice in the room. We go to a meeting and we hear from the 3 people who've had the same issue for the last 10 years. But this allows you to hear from all segments of your community in representative fashion. We reach out to them. They don't have to come to us. I like to think of it in 2 ways. One, what UCR has done for crime reporting, Zencity is going to do for public sentiment and trust. Secondly, I think if we're going to talk about community policing, and we need to hear from community. We're a $1 trillion industry. We've got agencies here with billion-dollar budgets. How much of those dollars go to making sure that we're aligned with what community wants to see? If we were private sector, we would have huge budgets to make sure that we're providing the services that community wants. Here you can do it for a fraction of that cost. You can make sure that your agency, your deputies are aligned with what community envisions. If you're just detention, I think this is equally important because, let's face it, right now it's very tough to find men and women who want to put on the uniform. Also, you are the elected official in your county. You are the face of law enforcement. I've served in sheriff's offices and chiefs, and as a chief, and I recognize it's the sheriff that people relate to. It's the person who's going to be on the news. It's the person who's got to run for re-election. I think it's very important as a sheriff to be able to see what your community is thinking, not every 4 years, but 24/7, 365. And last thing I want to share, because we're at about 10 minutes. So in Grand Rapids, I looked at my numbers, and consistently we were in the low 60s, high 70s, except for one neighborhood. The most challenging neighborhood in our city was Southeast Grand Rapids. We were there all the time. And unfortunately, in my mind, I equated us being there all the time with us having a relationship with that community. It wasn't the truth. We were there all the time because we were there for critical incidents. We were effecting an arrest. We were there for a disturbance. We were there doing the business of policing. What we weren't there doing was building relationships. So I looked at the Baxter neighborhood, and this was in August. We decided that we'd make a real concerted press on the Baxter neighborhood in Southeast Grand Rapids and see what we could do to move that needle. So it was back to school. We got barbers in the neighborhood to volunteer to give kids free back to school haircuts. We got Target and Walmart to donate school supplies and backpacks for kids who didn't have them. We set up our command post right there in Baxter Park, and we had an event for the kids. We had a bicycle rodeo where we gave out bike helmets to kids who otherwise wouldn't have been provided them. We made sure that bike patrols, our officers, instead of just telling them to go out there and do good, make relations, build trust, make friends, we were able to specifically direct them to neighborhoods where we thought their presence would have the most return on our investment. We did it all. Church services, homeowner associations, everything in that Baxter neighborhood, because it was the aberration. It was a good 20 plus points below the city's average. Over the course of about 12 weeks, we were able to raise that number from 38 in trust and safety all the way up to about 70%. So we literally almost doubled it. And the thing that is important to me and important to all of you, I took it as credit in the bank towards being able to withstand a critical incident. Because as sure as we're sitting here, there's going to be a critical incident. It may be our community or it may be national, but regardless, we're going to have to respond to it. I wanted to know as chief that we had enough good faith and banked within the community that if we had a tragedy or we had a questionable incident, the community would give us the benefit of the doubt and let it run its process. I'm pretty confident that if those trust scores had remained in the 30s, we would have a hard time convincing community that if we had a tragedy to give us time. We're going to work on this, work on it collaboratively. Now that the numbers are consistently in the 70s, I feel much more comfortable knowing that the city of Grand Rapids has the ability to withstand those challenges. So that's 15 minutes. I want to introduce my two partners, Gisela and Jean. Gisela is from our Israeli team. Just to kind of give you an idea of the scope of the company, we've got offices in Israel, Vancouver, Canada. We do business in England. We've got 9 of the 20 largest police departments in the country are currently customers. We've got Chicago, D.C., San Diego, but we also have communities as small as 20,000 people. So it's interesting. I talk to sheriffs from small communities, and they say, well, I've only got 20,000 people. That's a lot of people. If you've got 20,000, what percentage do you hear from? 200 on a regular basis? My math's not great, but I think that's 1%. So it leaves the other 99% kind of out of the loop. This gives you the ability to dial into them. One last thing that I wanted to say, assuming I can remember it, was... Any questions? Thank you. No? Yeah. Yeah, that's a great, thank you. So if you've got an issue that comes up, we can add a question to that. So let's say you're anticipating a new program or there's something you want to roll out. We can adjust the questions, we can modify the questions, we can make them direct for you so you can take action on the issues that you're facing. So it is customizable. This tool is specifically for law enforcement because let's face it, people don't show up to protest when potholes don't get filled. If the parks are kind of in disrepair, people grumble, but they don't march down Main Street. It's sheriff's offices and police departments that really motivate and unfortunately in some occasions alienate people. So what we're here to do is to make sure that you've got the ability to trust the relationships with all segments of your community, that you've got community aligned policing, that what you're talking about is in fact what the community wants to see you provide. And we're here to answer any questions. We're just over there over in 838 and appreciate your time. Thank you.